Who dat to you, everybody? Welcome into the Who Dat Confessional podcast, where today we're going to hit you with a few topics, tell you about the injury report, some things that we feel like need to be brought up based on what we've been seeing with this team, and then obviously we're going to try to preview a little bit of this New York Giants game, and hopefully New Orleans can come away with a win. This is, in a lot of ways, two teams that are in similar growth patterns and similar paths. The only difference is they picked up a win last week against an undefeated team. New Orleans has not gotten there first yet, but joined as always by Elias, my friend. How are you doing, man? Good to see you.
I'm doing pretty good, man. SaintsFootballTalk.com. Elias J. Williams of SaintsFootballTalk.com.
My man got it in at the beginning, so he didn't forget about it in the end. I like it.
But otherwise, I'm good, man. How about you?
I'm doing well. I mean, it's weird to say that I'm looking forward to Saints football, but I am. Like, I know everybody's tired of the losses, but it doesn't feel like it did when DA was here, where you're just kind of like going through the motions almost. Like, hey, they're going to win some games, but you know there's no future. Here, even though they're really, really bad right now, it feels like there's a future somewhere that we're going to get to. So I'm actually looking forward to every week looking at tape, looking at opponents, and hey, maybe we win, maybe we don't, but if nothing else, maybe we see growth. It actually reminds me of when I was a kid, and I used to love watching Saints football. And I was mostly watching individual players. Like I wanted to watch Sammy Knight, Leroy Glover, and Deuce McAllister, Ricky Williams, because I want to see individuals succeed and grow, and then hope that would produce better results. So let's start with somebody who we would love to produce results, who isn't going to play apparently anytime soon, and it's so bad that Rev got fooled by John Sigler. I really thought this man's calf was atrophying off the bone. I really did. But it was a believable thing if you followed New Orleans injury history slightly. So full injury report for New Orleans. Juwan Johnson, Trevor Penning, Dylan Radden, Cesar Ruiz, and Chase Young are all your DNPs. And it's getting to the point where, are we going to see this man this year at all?
You're going to see him. And, on one end, I understand how a calf injury can turn into a potential Achilles injury. And the Saints have invested a 3-year contract in him. And so they want to protect their investment. On one end, I understand that, you end up signing a Chase Young because you miss on the Marcus Davenport. You miss on the Peyton Turner. And you do not find an heir apparent to Cam Jordan while you're looking for one. So you're able to get Chase Young in for a year. He performs well in that year under that 1-year contract. You don't necessarily get the sack numbers, but the inconsistency things that they worried about, he was there the entire offseason, recovered well from the neck injury that they had, and they signed him to a 3-year contract. And yet, the moment he's back on a multi-year contract, you suddenly get the inconsistent Chase Young again. Now, injuries, not his fault at all. But it does make you like, come on, man. You 1-year deal, you hear every day, don't miss a snap. You give you some money and you right back to inconsistent injury status.
I can't blame him for being injured, but at the same time, it's kind of like how I hinted at earlier. Like, this is just such a New Orleans thing to be happening right now, and that's probably the more grating issue. Like, I'm not trying to blame him, but why is it always us?
Not going to blame him. In fact, I'm not going to expound on it any more than that, other than edge is very high on my radar next year. Saints have got to find a edge rusher in the draft, especially knowing that Chase Young, there's an out in his contract after 2026. Yeah. So he's already missed 4 games, right? He's never had a double-digit sack season. That means he's potentially going to continue missing games, which then lowers his chance of actually hitting those double-digit sacks, right? So for me, that means you have to still be looking at the edge position, because despite signing this man and signing to over 50+ million, you still don't know what you're going to get, and you only get the rest of this season when he plays, and then next season to find out if he can at any point turn into a pass rusher that's a 10+ sack a year guy. So just a random thought on that. The other injuries, you obviously would love to see Penning play. Based on what Kellen Moore said, he's trending up. So you potentially will see him. A lot of the high ankle sprains that we're dealing with in connection, everything. But um, listen, that defensive line for the Giants is their front seven is pretty strong. So you would like to get that offensive line
Mhm.
um, as healthy as possible, and like to see at least 4 of the 5 starters on it, minus Ruiz.
Yeah. And that look, I'm very much on the I want to see players like Simpkins get snaps. So I hope nobody takes this as me saying like I want Ruiz to be the long term guy. But I will say like if you miss 2 starters, that is a lot of pain. Like it's one thing that if Ruiz is hurt, you could have a guy like Simpkins slide in, and you have Penning on the other side. Like there is a important level to the continuity of an offensive line, and you need that with reps. And we can talk about wanting to develop guys, and that's completely fine. Radens is a guy who has started both sides in the NFL. He's a reliable backup. He's on the injury report, though. Trevor Penning is his first year moving into the spot. He's on the report. And good or bad, Ruiz was at least a constant. And to be clear, not all of Ruiz's play has been terrible. In fact, the gap that New Orleans is running the best out of right now through 4 weeks is actually the A gap between McCoy and Ruiz. Ruiz has definitely been a problem in pass pro, but if there's one area of the game that we saw in Buffalo that we can rely on, it's running that outside zone run, and it's that gap, and then it's Banks over on the outside on the left side, which probably doesn't surprise a lot of people, but everywhere else has been kind of a struggle. So I think that's big, but at the same time, I mean, it is what it is. You next man up. You just hate to see all 3 of these guards all injured at the same time. That's
Now,
really the issue.
tell me if I'm wrong on this. This is something I came across.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was Pat McAfee who mentioned it, that with the offensive line play,
Yeah.
when you're a zone blocking offensive line, losing a player hurts more because that offensive line is acting as a unit. And so there's a certain cohesion that takes place and a certain timing aspect to it,
Mm-hmm.
where the more reps they get together, the easier. But then you have an injury and it kind of throws a wrench in things versus a more of a man gap scheme. It's a little easier to plug and play when you lose a guy. Thoughts on that?
I think there is a lot of truth to it, mainly because there is extreme lack of offensive line depth across the league. Like it's not even just a New Orleans thing. It's just you have starting offensive linemen who, if we had to go pound for pound, defensive lines are deeper and more talented than offensive lines. I think a lot goes into that. You see a lot of offensive line minds like Jeff Schwartz lately. He's talking about, this is part of the CBA and they don't get to do 2-a-day practices anymore. I mean, 5 guys all having to play as one unit is difficult. And the less practice they have, less experience and reps can lead to worse play. And I'm not blaming all this on the CBA, just saying you see a lot of these O-line guys talking about it. And, another aspect of it is if you're going to run zone, you have to have very athletic offensive linemen. Now, luckily, guys like Banks fit into that. He might be a manpower style of guy, but he works. We've seen him, whether he's needed to swing outside in a screen, whether he's needed to zone block, he's able to handle it. But can you expect the guard who is number 4, number 5 to handle it? Right. So that's an issue. It's if you go into like what's more natural, most players, through high school, college, are probably going to run more man blocking. It's something they're more familiar with, used to. And that way, if you don't have uber athleticism, well, a 300-pound man is usually pretty strong. He can probably man block, even if he's not good enough to be a zone blocker. So there is potential worry for that. And, when we finally saw that offensive line really take off, you don't want to see that break down because of injuries. That is the concern. Now, good news, I guess, kind of hinting at the preview here. New York Giants currently giving up tied for the worst yards per play in rushing right now, tied with Chicago Bears. So it's not like you're going against a juggernaut of a run defense, but at the same time, I mean, says a lot when you're down to guard 4 and 5.
Now, something that we spoke about, it was noted by Kendre Miller. You brought it up in the chat. They did switch to more zone concepts last week. Now, listening to Moore's press conference on yesterday, he stopped just short of saying that they would continue to lean into that. He kind of hinted at it more of it was an advantage to them wanting to play more under center last week versus in the gun. And so the wide zone tied into that with the play action, but then mentioning more or less like they're going to play different teams that maybe are going to force them to have to play different concepts.
Yeah.
And so for that, I believe he was mentioning that the Giants are a little bit stronger on the edge. They've got Thibodeau on the edge. They've got Brian Burns on the edge. And so he seemed a little bit more reticent about just kind of committing to it.
Yeah.
But here's my question on this. At what point do you say, this is who we are, this is what we're good at, we're going to do this until you prove to us you can stop it, versus always morphing to kind of try to beat a team week to week, which I think is important, but also you got to be able to keep some of your identity into it versus saying, okay, even though we established an identity here last week as a much better zone running scheme, we're saying this week, it looks like this team may be better at defending it, so we'll probably not run it as much. At what point do you say, look, stop me?
I think this is a game where you say stop me, because I do agree with what Moore's saying about New York, is that they might be a little bit stronger, but at the same time, New York has given up the 4th most 10-yard runs in the NFL. They're giving up the most yards per attempt. A lot of that is coming from the inside, though, right? I mean, so that's there. But at the same time, your New Orleans Saints currently average 4.5 yards per play in passing and 4.4 yards per play in rushing. And that is kind of out of context. We've only seen them run that outside zone scheme primarily in one game. I mean, so if you take that one game as the reference, well, then you're 4.5 in pass and about 6 in rushing. Well, clearly you've got one thing you found that's working.
That works, right?
Use it.
Right.
Now, I get what he's saying, but kind of like to your point, don't get so cute where like, oh, you overthink it. You found what's working. Do it.
Until they stop.
And I just don't think New York's a team that stops it. Are there teams out there that I would say, hey, we really should probably reconsider that strategy? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if New Orleans was going against, Tampa right now, Tampa has a very good run defense up front. Yeah, change the path. Not against New York, especially when you finally got a glimmer of hope. You went against a great team and went pound for pound until the last 5-10 minutes of the game. Use that. If anything, use it as a confidence builder for Rattler and Kendre Miller and these young guys who need to pop off and want to pop off.
Now, a big component to what they're going to be doing this week is going to play on Jackson Dart, right?
Yeah.
Rookie Saints don't tend to do well. For whatever reason, you would think that there's an advantage playing against a rookie quarterback, and yet we have a long history of making young rookies, first-year quarterbacks look better than they should. Now, Jackson Dart, I think, gave up 6 sacks last week, or was sacked 6 times, but his first drive was a 90-plus yard drive, which is pretty significant for a rookie. I think it shows he's got some moxie about him. I also saw where he was he called one of the plays, I think it was the pitch to the tight end. He went and spoke to the tight end prior and said, hey, if they do this, play flat and I'm going to pitch you the ball. So it shows that he's got a little bit of playground in him, some sort of confidence in him. How do the Saints do a better job of dealing with Dart and stopping him from actually, game breaking them the way we've seen so many young quarterbacks do that to the Saints?
It's honestly a great question. It was 5 sacks because Russell had 1, but it was 38% pressure rate is what Jackson Dart had in his first kind of run as a starter. That's crazy numbers. Like, New Orleans has yet to put out anything like that so far this year. And kind of like to your point, like for whatever reason, no, it doesn't matter who the coach is, Saints have struggled with guys who can get out the pocket, whether it be pocket passers who can run, which is kind of like how I would define a Russell Wilson. Russell was never like a run-first quarterback, but he could kill you. And Jackson Dart, I think, can do similar. Like, I don't look at him like I look at Josh Allen, but at the same time, he ran for 12 attempts and like 50 yards. So obviously, you got to respect it. I think one thing the New Orleans needs to focus on is that man coverage we talked about and spies.
Right.
I want to blitz him from some exotic looks that he's maybe not seen, because last week he did well in pressure. And I'm not saying he didn't, but what is the likelihood that a young quarterback, first time in the NFL, doesn't even have 5-10 games under him, like Rattler does, is going to consistently be able to handle complex coverages and pressure? At some point it breaks. And I just think that you don't really leave the method you saw the Chargers do. You just hope you're more successful. I don't even think the Chargers were bad at pressuring him. It's just he balled out. And sometimes that's going to happen. You can do all the right things and still lose, right? So I think kind of what you and I have both been hitting on for weeks now. Bring the actual pressure. Don't just feint it, especially from the edge. That way you can get guys like Alontae Taylor right up in his face, and particularly from his blind side, and get in his face and see if you can rattle him. And if you can, awesome. And if you can't, well, I don't think he's going to throw 300 yards and 3 TDs either. Because even last week, which was a good game, his combined total yards were like 160 yards. So that was almost a game of attrition between the Chargers and the Giants. And I don't think Jackson's coming in and, throwing 350, 3 or 4 TDs. They're going to win, that being the Giants, by a war of attrition, similar to how New Orleans needs to win, right? So simply play that style. And I think you've got guys like Granderson and Davis and even to a degree Warner and stuff who you can blitz off edges and make that happen. You just got to do it. Just don't sit there and drop everybody in coverage 80% of the time.
Yeah, and how much of that was the Chargers not being prepared to play him either? They prepared to play Russell all week. And then Russell gets benched, you insert that young quarterback, and you didn't spend a lot of time on him. There was no full-on scouting report. Maybe you expected to see him for a couple of snaps.
Yeah, maybe nobody was ready to play QB spy or anything, right? Like nobody was set up to do that game. Exactly, which is why I think you don't overthink it. You stick with what typically works against guys like that. They're going to be a rookie quarterback. We're going to pressure them. We'll still have guys play contain. One thing I think Cameron Jordan did really well against Josh Allen. I know that seems kind of weird to say because Allen did have some big plays, but I remind everybody we're talking about a guy, MVP. So very good player. But he did a really good job of containing Allen on the edge and stuff. Make sure you have that contain, have that QB spy, but pressure him. And I think that's the way you rattle a young quarterback, especially in his first away game. Hopefully the fans enjoy it enough to get a little bit loud in the dome.
Yeah. That I don't know. That kind of worries me. I don't know how well the Giants fans will travel, but a big advantage of this game will be having the crowd into it, especially when Dart has the ball with communication. Speaking of communication, do you think we go back to the gun a little bit more, considering what Kellen Moore said last week, where they got under center because that helps with the communication, and it ultimately ended up limiting the penalties? But you can tell when talking to him or, paying attention to how he spoke, he has a preference for the quarterback being in the gun a little bit more for some of the things that it helps do. You saw how well Rattler played from under center. You saw some of the things. But again, this is coming from a coach who, in answering questions, he learns from the mistakes, but you can tell that he still has preferences.
Absolutely.
For certain things. And so you wonder, how much of last week was just the opponent, and then if he kind of goes back into the shotgun, which to this point hadn't worked as well.
I'll say this. I agree. He wants to run things his way. Hopefully Buffalo was a lesson to him that, that's what I want to do. But what works? Rattler so far this season, 4 games, has thrown 3 TDs, no interceptions, and a 101 QB rating from play action. He's also only been pressured 22% and taken 1 sack, right? So clearly he's operating better from that versus no play action from the gun, where he's been pressured 37% of the time, taken 8 sacks, and only has an 84 QB rating, right? Play action benefits everybody, because one thing we've learned, and I learned this years ago, I think everybody else can acknowledge it, it doesn't matter if your running game is good or not. It's the force respect. You want proof? Look at Buffalo falling for Rattler doing play action to Casper the Friendly Ghost. Like, AK literally goes out the backfield to the swing, and he still does play action, and the linebackers still bite. It buys you that extra second. What are some negatives? Well, generally, if you're going to play action, especially with play action boot, you're limited to half-field reads. Good news. That's what Rattler's doing anyway right now. That's fine. I think, I get it. You want to play bigger, fuller. You're in game 5 with what is essentially a rookie quarterback in terms of less than 16 games starting. Keep with the play action. I feel like I'm you this episode because I'm saying keep it simple, stupid, right? You've seen what's working for where you're at. Stick with it.
Yeah, that was something else that he mentioned, which was he said from the gun, it's easier to get to some of those duo blocks that he
Yeah.
likes to run, right? Versus being on the center, it lends itself more to that zone
Yeah.
run. So it'll be interesting, I think, to see. I am in agreement. I think there were a lot of parts of a winning identity
Mm-hmm.
that were prevalent last week, and you would be wise to continue leaning into those things. Now, what I did like in listening to Moore is how much he champions the players having a say so. And so he mentioned that there were a couple of plays last week where the players kind of brought something to his attention and they ran those things. And we do know that Kamara made a point about wanting to get Kendre Miller more involved in the offense, and then you saw that happen. And I think that's the biggest difference between the losing this year and how the players are responding versus the losing last year under
Mm-hmm.
Allen, where you have players that are saying the communication just wasn't good under Allen. And
Yeah.
so you're seeing that be much better with this year's team. And so you're not seeing guys get so down on themselves despite the losing. I think there's a real belief in that locker room on that roster that they're like this close. And even if you just look at the progression of the games outside of the Seattle, but then the response to the Seattle game, you can see the progression is there as they continue to learn each other. And Moore did speak highly about it in his opening press conference. He mentioned that, hey, it may be weeks into the season before we get to know each other, but there's a process of learning. So there's a portion of him that wants to do what he wants to do, but there's obviously a side to him that he's good with learning and saying, hey, we will tailor and tinker until we find a winning formula. And I think a lot of that winning formula was the zone run, play action, a little bit more man coverage on D. Love the NASCAR package. They brought that
Mm-hmm.
up during the interview. Granderson on the inside, Cam on the outside, and you had Chris Rumpf on the other side. And then I believe you had Brzee rushing from the interior spot, and they did it on
Yeah.
back-to-back plays. Right, the first play I think was a penalty, and then the second play ended up being the Granderson sack. And so I think that's something you have to lean into too, because on the defensive side of the ball, their time to rush or the time it took them to get to the quarterback was like the league lowest. They didn't have enough juice off
Mm-hmm.
the ball. And I spoke to that about, you're spending a lot of time rushing your nose tackle, your Jonathan Bullards. They don't have explosive get offs. And so you're ending up with not a lot of pressure, especially not a lot of speed off the ball, a little timing off the snap. And so there was a lot of points of that were getting there with the identity. And so I think it
Yeah.
would just be wise on them to lean into those things rather than saying we're going to morph this week because of the team we're playing.
The main thing I'd like to see change is 10% increase for Kendre Miller. He made it to 30% of the snaps against Buffalo. Week 1, he was at 14%
Yeah.
of the snaps. I want him at 40%, which means AK by default's at 60.
60,
That is
yeah.
the balance I think is the perfect harmony they need to find. And I think that also helps out more because Kendre is a little bit better at playing man running anyway. Right? So when you do want to have that trap block or that duo, well, Kendre Miller's just going to full steam ahead the A gap or B gap if that's his role. AK, not exactly like Le'Veon Bell, but old school football fans
more
remember
patient.
when he was very patient. He wants to hit his gap. He's going to find his target, then he's going to explode. That's just AK's style. He's a one-cut zone runner. Although AK's talented enough to play man, he's always been a great zone runner where he's a good man rusher. So that's the big one for me. I'm not even getting on the wide receivers, the tight end room. I am excited about possibly seeing Taysom Hill back, even if that is next week, more of a thing. But for me, the biggest thing, baby steps for this offense, 10% more to Kendre Miller. I think that literally helps out AK. I think it helps out the O-line. And I think it helps out Spencer Rattler, right? The more this team gets known and seen as a run-dominating team, the more that is going to benefit the passing game.
Need to be run balanced.
Yeah.
Need to be run balance. It'll be interesting.
Which key
to
to
see
that is defense not giving up points and getting behind by 2 scores in the first half. That's key to that.
And I do believe as it stands right now, the Saints have yet to play with a lead this year. So one of the the biggest things they can do is very much start fast in this game. If they can get a 7-point lead, that'll already be something that they haven't done in 4 games. And so that may be a great omen for them, just that little small detail about it. But how do we feel about are we writing this down as a win? Should this be a win? Or are we looking at this as a parity thing where the Giants could come out of this with a W?
25-21 Saints win.
25. So is this your first game calling a win?
It is.
Is this your first game calling a win?
First one.
Okay. 25-21 Saints. Okay. I'm going to do 25-21 Giants just cause.
See, I'm specifically picking the number 25 too because it's an ugly offensive number. Like it makes you think, how do you get to 25?
25.
Exactly. That's how the Saints are going to win this game. Ugly, but that single win would help this young group like Rattler, like Kendra, have so much more confidence.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
Yeah, I think it could be an ugly win for them, but this is definitely a winnable game.
Yeah, I think confidence is really all they're missing at this point. I think they believe in the staff. I think they trust the coaching. I think they just need that little bit of boost of confidence that tells them, hey, we can do this. And if they potentially could easily snowball. You know, you get that little bit of confidence, you snowball, you get a win this week, you go into next week, you possibly get a win there, and all of a sudden you're 2-4. All right. Now, here's a question that I've seen, and we may be able to glance out with this.
Okay.
Do you think that Rattler has to win one of these 2 games to keep from getting benched?
Well,
do you think he needs to win a game in the next 3 weeks? We'll call it 3 weeks to stop him from to kind of stave off the rookie.
I'm gonna answer it with 2 answers because y'all know me. I have a problem with not just saying yes or no. I think Spencer Rattler can look really good over the next 2 games and they still lose, and that's why I don't like to say he needs to win it. Because I think that he can still look good. But at the same time, I know how the NFL works. I know how people view things, media. If he goes into the bye week and has not won a game, they're considering having Shuck take the number 1 snaps in the bye week. That way, when he has the next week, he's had 2 weeks with the starters. It really comes down to how Rattler plays. But I will say this, as much as I hate people attributing wins and losses to QBs, it certainly is going to get done, whether I like it to be that way or not. So there is a little bit of a pressure there. There's a couple people on Saints Twitter who put it this way. Rattler has to do something to stave off Shuck. And he's either moving positively or negatively. There is no neutral rep. If you do not do well enough to push Shuck back, then you're not doing well enough to keep him from encroaching forward. There is no, hey, you did well enough and we've kept things as they are. No, you're either bringing him closer to you or further away. He needs to push Shuck further away from him.
I'm going to go against the grain.
Okay.
I'm going to go against the grain and say that Shuck is the coach's player.
Okay.
And I'm going to say that Rattler is the player's player. I think those guys like playing with under 4 behind Rattler. And I think if you're a coach like Kellen Moore that says he wants the players, it's a player-led team, right? He's said that many times. It's a players-led team. It is hard to go against the players if they want Rattler, regardless of the record with him. There's been several players that have said, and even Moore himself, that they're in position to win with Rattler. They're just not winning. He's definitely not taking them out of position to win.
He's not turning the ball over. He's not making
that's very important in the grand scheme. Like as I've said before, once the team starts playing better, his errors will become more egregious. But as of right now, his errors aren't as egregious because everything around him isn't playing up to par. I'm going to say that I don't think he does have to force anything. I think he just needs to not be bad. I think neutral is okay for him, and I think playing above that is okay for him to keep off Shook. But I think as long as he doesn't play bad or has some
What?
type of collapse in the
How
month of
about this?
October, I think they'd like to see Shook sit for the entire year if possible.
How about this? Let's give a stat line of what we think Rattler needs to average over the next 2 games for that to not happen. That fair? I think he needs to average 250 total yards, not passing, total yards, and 2 TDs a game. And that will keep Shook on the bench, even through the bye week. Assuming he's not turning the ball over at the same time.
I think he needs to lead an offense that can score more than 20 points a game.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it too.
If he can do that, if they can cross that 20-point threshold and show progression in that way, I think you ride with him until the wheels fall off. As far as you ride with him until he starts to make it like it's a screw up, like I'm just screwing up really bad. I don't think you bench him for just being a second-year quarterback who is still learning, because Moore has pointed that out. Like, it's not going to be perfect with him, and they're very understanding of that, where everyone else is like, oh, a franchise quarterback has to make these throws, has to do this, and they quite frankly don't see it that way because they still see him as learning.
Yep, I won't refute that. I think that's a solid logic. I really like the offense itself needs to be averaging 24-ish points. If they can get up to that number, like the 25 we talked about, if they win, that's enough. They'll do it. All right, y'all. Y'all let us know what you think in the comment section down below. Appreciate y'all watching and listening. Who dat to you. God bless. We'll see you after the game.